Hi everyone, I'm Ellie, founder of Code of the Future, and today I'm starting my Python Matplotlib tutorial series for beginners. So firstly, what is Matplotlib? Matplotlib is a low-level graph plotting library in Python, which means you can plot graphs in it, which is really cool. The plots aren't just limited to static, so not just a 2D picture on your screen. You can also make interactive visualizations where you can move certain things, and also animated. Those are a little bit more complicated, so I will only be touching those more complicated things in an intermediate Matplotlib tutorial series. So it's a pretty incredible library. I would say that it's used a lot in data analysis, so if you're somebody that's looking to go into data analysis, then Matplotlib is definitely a library that is very useful to have. I've used it on my internship as part of the UK Space Agency. That was a programming internship, but a lot of that handled data analysis, and I used Python, and it was honestly crazy what plots I could make with Matplotlib, so I'm excited to show you some of those in this tutorial series. It's mainly used for data analysis, but it's not limited to data analysis, as it can be used in a whole variety of different areas as well. What's great about Matplotlib is you don't just have to use Matplotlib, you can also use other Python libraries alongside it, which is very cool and gets very interesting. So that's one of the cool things about Matplotlib, is you can use other Python libraries alongside it to enhance your coding ability and also enhance your plots that you create. Throughout this Matplotlib tutorial series, I'll be showing you some of the basic operations as well as hands-on examples. I'm aware this tutorial series is for beginners, so I don't want to make it too difficult. I'm going to guide you through each video, and some of the stuff may seem completely obvious, but I can guarantee if you don't get taught it, you'll probably skip over it and you'll forget it when you then go to use Matplotlib later. So my plan on this tutorial series is to show you a whole range of things that you can do in Matplotlib, and also give you some hands-on examples as well. And hopefully you can watch my videos and code alongside me and do some pretty awesome things. Okay, perfect. So I am on my desktop here. The first way that you can download Matplotlib is by going to your terminal. So we're going to open up the terminal, and this is what my terminal looks like. So if you have Python already on your laptop and everything's all set up, then all you're going to type in is pip3 install matplotlib. Now if that doesn't work, just write pip and see if that works. So perfect. What this has told me is it's installed it. I obviously already have it on my computer. This is my old laptop that I'm using today because my new one is currently updating, so this is a couple of old settings on here. So what it says here is the requirement is already satisfied, and that just means that it's downloaded and it's already in there, so I can start using it. So if you want to do it through the terminal and this hasn't worked for you, and if you omit the 3 it also hasn't worked for you, there are documents online that give you certain commands that you can write in here and press enter. But if you don't know how that works, I'm going to show you how to do it in PyCharm, because this is probably an easier way, especially for beginners. So don't worry if watching this is making you feel a little bit scared because you don't know what a terminal is and you're not sure what's going on. Don't worry. What I'm going to show you is how you can do it through PyCharm. I heavily recommend using PyCharm because it's just so easy to import specific modules, and also a lot of my coding videos online use PyCharm, and I think it's a very nice IDE, an integrated development environment for beginners. So we're going to cross off terminal. So my laptop already has Matplotlib installed on it. I've just done it through pip install. However, now this is where my Matplotlib tutorial series is going to begin. That's why this is currently on my screen. What you can do, the alternative ways, you can have PyCharm here, and all you're going to do is you're going to go into PyCharm, you're going to go to preferences. This is probably similar to settings in Windows, and all you're going to do is you'll have this drop down menu. You're going to go to the project you're in, so I'm in my Code of the Future project. You're going to go to Python interpreter, you're going to click this plus arrow here, and all you're going to do is you're going to type in matplotlib. Now I can install a new version of this plotting package, so I can click install package. I'm currently using my older laptop, which I haven't updated in quite a while. That's why a few of the settings are a little bit older, but it is exactly the same thing. So we're just going to install the package and show you what will happen once you've installed it. It will just do the little this button up here, and then it will say package matplotlib installed successfully. Perfect. You just cross off this, you click OK, and notice it says package matplotlib installed successfully. These are all the packages that you can use in Python, and these are a lot of them that I use as part of my internship. So you just click OK, and there you go. Matplotlib is all done. Essentially what would happen is if you started coding in PyCharm and you wrote this import here, you wrote matplotlib, or just simply import matplotlib, it would come up with a red line under here, and it would say it doesn't recognize this module. It's similar if I was to use a different library in Python, I didn't have it installed. So it's just worth remembering, if it does come up with a little red line underneath here, it just means it's not installed, or you spelt it wrong. So the way you overcome that is just by going into the settings and importing it into the project interpreter, and that is probably the easiest way of doing it. When I was learning how to code as a beginner, that's the way that I did it every single time. It just means that it's there, already there in this specific project. What's worth mentioning is if you were to create a new project, so my project here is Code of the Future, if you were to create a new project, it's not guaranteed to be in that new project. So the whole idea about what I've just shown you then, the latter one, the second option, is that it's not installed for every single project, whereas the pip install, it will be. So that's just something that's worth remembering. So this is how you install Matplotlib, through PyCharm and also through pip install. As I said, if you want to do it through pip install and it hasn't worked for you, there are documents online that tell you exactly what you need to write depending on your operating system. I appreciate I am on a Mac, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear for any of you that aren't on Macs. Okay, perfect. So we'll start from where we left off in the previous video. So I'll just delete this here because we don't need it. So what we have here is we're importing the relevant modules, and what's really important is that you import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT before you do anything in this video. Before you can get started plotting, you need to write this very important line here. And if you're unsure on how to install Matplotlib, then I've mentioned that in my previous video, so check that out if you can install Matplotlib onto your computer. Okay, so it turns out that Matplotlib is not the only library that we need today. We're also going to import NumPy as NP. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what NumPy is, it's essentially like a data analysis library. I've done videos on my channel before, but you don't need to know anything about NumPy before we go into this video, as I'll explain what's going on in each step. So it's important that you import these two things here. And now all I'm going to say is creating simple arrays. So an array, very simply, is very similar to a list. So what we're going to do is we're going to say x equals np.array. So this is creating a NumPy array, and we're going to put two brackets in here. We're going to say 0, 100. So what this is doing is it's creating an array from 0 to 100. So if I was to print x, and I will run this script, we'll click Matplotlib tutorial series. Okay, so it's going to print x. Okay, perfect. So there we go, it's printed this array, and the array is essentially like a list, but it doesn't have these commas in it. So if you are a little bit confused by what, you know, a NumPy array is, there is a video on my channel, so check that out if you're interested, but you don't really need to know much about it in order to understand how this video works. So this is creating an array. We'll just delete this here, and we're just going to assign a new array to y. So we're going to say np.array, and we're going to have, let's say, 0 to 4. Okay, so what we have is these two arrays. Now I'm going to plot these two arrays using Matplotlib, and the way that you do that, I'm just going to put plotting x and y. Very, very simply, you just say plt.plot x, y. Now if I run this, notice that nothing happens. It says process finished with exit code 0. Nothing happens, and you're probably thinking, well, why is that the case when I've said plot x and y? What's really worth remembering in Matplotlib is you always need to write plt.show in order to see the graph. This is applicable to any graph that you plot. So you're just going to put plt.show, and now when I run this, hopefully it'll move over here. Perfect, look at that. We have our very first plot in Matplotlib. And notice what it's done is it's taken the point here, 0, 0, and here we have 4, 100. So you may think, those numbers sound very familiar. Those are the numbers that we inputted into here. So what we have is, along the x-axis we have 0, 100. So we have these 2 points. So along the x-axis we have 0 and we have 100. And what Matplotlib does is it will take these two numbers and match it with these two numbers here. So essentially you'll have 0, 0, which is what we see here, 0, 0. And you'll also have 100, 4. So we have 100 and 4 there. So perfect. We've basically taken two different points. We have 0, 0, 104, and it's plotted them. So I'll just make sure here I'll put, this shows the plot. Now what's really worth mentioning is if I was to write here y and x, and I was to rerun this, notice how the coordinates have changed. We have 0, 0 as usual, but instead of 100 down here we have 4, and then we have 100 over here. So what's really worth remembering is that whatever you put in here, the first argument, so y, so I'll just put here, the first is called an argument. An argument is essentially what you put into certain brackets. So the first argument is the x-axis, and the second argument is the y-axis. So notice that even though I called this the y, I put it first, it made it the x-axis. So it's worth remembering that whatever you put in here first, and I'll just put it back to x and y so you understand, this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. And similarly, when you start to do things like 3D graphs, which I won't be showing in this tutorial series, it's a little bit too complicated, you can put an extra argument and you just put z in there. But obviously we're not touching upon that one today. So there you go, that is how you plot a very, very simple line in Matplotlib. I'm making these videos, step by step, showing you how to do things, because I understand, sometimes it can get a little bit overwhelming when you're learning a new Python library, so I'm making sure these videos are very guided and very easy for you to understand. So we have plotted a very, very cool plot, and in the next video I'll be showing you how you can plot several different plots, so you could have, lines looking like this, which will look crazy. Okay, perfect. So we're going to start from where we left off in the previous video. So in the previous video I showed you how you can plot x and y and plot a simple line. So I'll just put here a simple line from the previous video, and hopefully you'll be following this tutorial series. If not, don't worry, I'm going to be doing it chunk by chunk. So what I'm going to say now is plotting several points in Matplotlib. Okay. Now for this, I'm just going to comment out the previous code that I've used, just so it doesn't interfere with anything that we do today. So I'll add some lines down here and we'll move on to plotting several points in Matplotlib. So this is very similar to what we did in the previous video, and I'll just show you how it works. So we're going to create a new variable. We're going to choose x and y again, just because we won't be using these ones up here. So we're going to create a NumPy array again, but this time instead of just 0, 100, we're going to input certain numbers in here. So let's say 30, 13, well 12, I accidentally put 12, 56 and 19, and then 100. Perfect. We're going to do the same for y. We're going to create a NumPy array, and we're going to say, okay, let's have 40, 72, 80, 13, 17, 39. Okay. And then we'll do very similar to what we did before. We're going to say plt.plot x and y. Remember, whatever argument we put in first is x, and whatever argument we put in is y. So x-axis, y-axis. And then we're going to do the plt.show, because that's very important. We need to show what we've plotted. So let's run this, and hopefully we'll get a very interesting plot. Wow, that is very interesting indeed. Yeah, very, very interesting. So you're probably looking at this and thinking, what on earth has just happened? And essentially what we've done is we've grouped together certain plots. So we've got the point 0 and 40, which is here. The next one we have is 30 and 72, so we have 30, 72 there. Then we have 12 and 80, so we've got 12 around here, well 12 around there, and 80, and then it follows the pattern from there. So you're probably thinking, wow, that is a very crazy graph. And very true, it is. You could do something a lot more simple, and you could just put, okay, well let's have 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 100, and then similarly let's have 0, we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, and say 30. So what's happening here is we're doing it in increasing order. This is also in increasing order, so we expect it to not have these random overlaps that we see. But it's still very cool to show you that sometimes you may think you're plotting something that's going to be a very straightforward graph, and it produces something as crazy as this. So we're going to rerun this, and I'll show you what happens now. Perfect. So this is a bit of a nicer plot, you must, you might think, and we've just plotted, the plots that we see, that we've written here. So perfect. That's how you plot several different points in Matplotlib. You can make it as crazy as the first one, or you can make it as simple as this second example here. Let's say you don't want to join each of the lines. Let's say in the first example you don't want, let's say in the first example, so I'll just reverse everything that I've done and put the numbers back to what we had to begin with. let's say in that first example, you don't want there to be lines, so you don't want it to look as crazy as what it is, because let's face it, that's pretty crazy. Let's say instead you just want points here or here. There are two ways that you can do that, and I'll just show you that now. So instead of a line, and I'll just put this down, a line graph, we want a scatter graph. So there's two ways that you can do this. You can either say plt.plot, and we'll have x, y as usual, and you can put a string in here, and you can put O, and you do it with this string, and you say O. So now when I go to run this Python file, notice we have a scatter plot. How cool is that? So that's one way of doing it. So I'll say method 1, or you could have method 2, which is very simple. You say plt and you say scatter, and then you say x and y, and then you say plt.show. Perfect. So we'll run this again. Notice we have this one, and then if we cross off this, it gives us the exact same. So if you have two different things, so we've got plt.plot and we've got .show, and we've got .show, it will show whatever is above the show, and similarly here it's going to show this. Okay, cool. So now we know how to plot line graphs with different points, but also scatter graphs as well. Something that's really worth remembering, and I'm going to write it here. Each NumPy array has to be the same length, and what that means is the number of elements in here has to be equal to the number of elements in here. It has to be, because watch what happens if I get rid of this here and we have a mismatch, and I go to run it, we'll get a big error, and it'll say x and y must have the same first dimension. One has shape 6 and one has shape 5. That's because this has 6 elements in here and this one has 5 elements in here. So worth reiterating, they must be the same length. Okay, perfect. So I'm starting where we last left off in the previous video, and I'm going to be showing you Python, and I'm going to be showing you Matplotlib's default x and y axis. Okay, so we've done some things previously. We've created different arrays and we've plotted different plots, just so it doesn't interfere with anything further that we're going to do. I'm just going to comment stuff that we've done previously, just so it doesn't interfere with what we're going to do now. So Matplotlib's default x and y axis. So previously we've plotted two different arrays and we've put them together, and we've noticed that Matplotlib pairs points like this. So 0, 40, 30, 72, 12 and 18. Things like that. Now you're probably wondering, well, what happens if I don't put both arrays? What happens if I just put one? So let's create a new x-axis. Let's create a new x-axis, or x-axis that we want to plot. So NumPy array, and we're going to probably just go, let's say 10, 20, 30, 100. Okay, and then let's say we're going to plot it. So we'll say plt.plot, and we'll just put x, and then we're going to show this. Okay, so let's run this and see what happens. So bear in mind we're plotting the x-axis here. Okay, so notice what's happened here. So we've got these points here. We have 0, 10, 20, 30, 100. And notice that these are going up the y-axis. So essentially, if you input any default array, let's say you want to input a certain array, what it's going to do is it's going to plot that along the y-axis in this specific case. And what the x-axis does is it will do a default. And what that means is, for the first point it will do 0, for the second point it will do 1, for the third point it will do 2, and so on and so forth. So if I was to put some extra characters in here, so we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say I was going to do 7 different points in here. And we run this. Notice now that it goes from 0 to 6. Essentially, however many numbers you put in this array that you're going to plot, just one array that you're going to plot, it will do it along the y-axis, and it will take the length of the array that you have. So in this case we have 7, and it will do it up to that number minus 1, and it will include 0. So equally, if I had another one in here, we'd expect it to go up to, maybe not that large, we'd expect it to go up to 7, because we have 8 numbers and 8 minus 1 is 7. There you go, 7. So this is something that's worth remembering, and this is what happens when you just simply put plot an x value. What I'm trying to show you in this video is that if you were to just plot one array with, you know, some random numbers in it, the Matplotlib's default is to automatically assign those with numbers from 0 to the final number being 1 minus the final number being the number of elements in your array. So here, minus 1. So here, 7. So whatever you put on this side, it will plot them, but it will assign them with numbers from 0 to, you know, whatever number it may be. So 7 in our example. So that's just something that's worth remembering. This is very handy and it's worth mentioning. You don't need to create, you know, a y variable. It is very handy. I think for the ease of this video, I'll just change this to an a, just so we don't get confused between x and y axis, and I'll just make sure that's plot a. What's handy with this is it means that you can plot. So let's say you've got a class size, you know, of 10 students, and in that student you, I don't know, take their shoe size. So you can create an array like this one with their shoe size, and then when you go to plot it, it will say, you know, first student, second student, third student has this, and it shows you a good trend. It means you don't have to just put 1, 0 to, you know, how many students there are. That's why it's very handy, and also it's just something that's worth bearing in mind. It's very handy, and it's something that I used when I did my internship, my programming internship. Very handy, simple thing, you know, just omitting an argument in here, and it plots it very nicely. Okay, perfect. So we are picking up where we left off in the previous video, where we were talking about the default x and y axis. So again, to, you know, not interfere with anything that I'm doing, I'm just going to comment out what we did in the previous video, so no plots, you know, pop up in this video. So now I'm going to be showing you markers in Python. In Matplotlib, put it in capitals because it's really cool. So let's say we have, so I'm going to create some new arrays. We're going to have np.array. I think we'll just have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's let y equal the array. And let's have, oh, let's go 20, 30, 50, 100, something like that. Okay, cool. So we've got these arrays and we can plot these. So as usual, we'll say plt.plot. We'll say x first, then y, because that's the x-axis, then the y-axis. And in here, this is where you include your markers. So the way that you do that is you will go marker and make it equal to O. So what's worth mentioning is there are a whole range of markers. I'll put an image on the screen now of all the different ones you can try out. You have diamonds, squares, circles, you know, ovals, a whole range of different markers, so it's worth, you know, playing around. I'll show you a couple of them today, and then, you know, you can, and then I'll leave it to you to have a little play around with all the ones there are. So okay, we've got plt.plot, we've got the marker is O, so that means it's going to be a circle. That means it's going to be a circle. We're going to say plt.show, and I'm just going to run this. So let's see what happens. Ah, I have made a mistake. I have not put an extra argument in here. Remember that from my previous video. You need to make sure that the size of this matches with the size of this. I know that that's wrong because it's told me that x and y must have the same first dimension. Okay, I've amended that. We'll run it now, and hopefully there we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put plt.plot just x and y ordinarily. We'll just comment this out and I'll show you what it will produce to begin with without the marker. So this is what it produces to begin with without the marker. So just straight lines. Now if I was to put that back in and just remove this, and we stop the Python file and we run, notice we have these little circles in here. Amazing. So this is how you add markers, and it's a very nice way of showing where your different points are. You know, here we've got a huge gap, but it could be that you could have something, you know, you could have one here and just not be able to see it. That's what's really handy with markers, because it allows you to definitely see where your points are on your screen. Really, really cool. So let's try another one. Let's do S, I think. Let's do star. We'll stop this and run. Let's see what star does. Cool, it does a star. So something worth mentioning with Matplotlib. So in Matplotlib you get these little tools down here, and I'll explain what they mean in the next video. Essentially you can zoom. This is what a zoom is, and you can just go to the bit that you want to zoom into. Perfect, look at that. So now I can keep zooming, and the star's there. And if you go back, it'll take you back to the original plot. Awesome. And I will be showing you how to change the marker size later on in this tutorial series. Awesome, so we've got a star. Let's try I think D is diamond, if I remember from my data analysis days. Let's have a look. Diamond, awesome, there you go. And then similarly, I think S is a square. Let's go with that. Awesome, square. There you go. So that's how you change your marker in your plot. Very, very cool, very handy, and it makes your data analysis skills and your visual, plots a lot nicer when you start, playing around with markers and colours. Okay, cool. So we have this from my previous video where I showed you how to change your markers in Matplotlib, and what I'm going to show you now is just what features are included when you do plot. So I will just rerun this Python file again, and we're just going to plot a plot in Matplotlib. Okay, so we've got this here. You're probably thinking, okay, this is cool, I've got my little plot here, but what are these little things down here? So I'll start with some of the main ones that I use when I do use Matplotlib, and it is this one here. So this is zoom. Now what this means is you can click this and it gives you the chance to highlight the section that you want to zoom into. Okay, so it's zoomed in, and again I can zoom in here, I can zoom in here, and it's getting smaller and smaller each time it's zooming in. The marker stays the same, but if you look at the axis, it zooms in. I can make it really, really small. Look at that, going so zoomed in. So that's what this feature does here. This here means I can move. It means I can move along my graph, move across. I can get out of view. That's not very handy, but I can. And then I can move, up here, do whatever. So that's moving. Okay. Now these two arrows here mean you can go back to what you've just done. So I've done that. I can go back, so I was moving my screen, I can go back, back, and if I keep going back, you'll find that it will eventually go back to where the original graph was, which is here. If I go forward, it will go forward in time, and then if you've zoomed in so many times and you don't want to keep pressing the back, arrow here like I've done, you can click this here, which is the home button, and that will reset it to the original view. Click that, and it's back to the original view. Perfect. Now this here is quite simply to save the figure, so I can save this as figure1.png. You can change it to whatever you want. It is a PNG file. We'll click save, and there you go, it's saved onto my desktop, and there we go, saved it. Awesome. And that's something that I use a lot when I did my dissertation. And then this final button here, this here is essentially just showing you how you can move around the plot. So what I'll do is I'll put them side by side and I'll show you what happens. So if I move this, notice how the left hand side of the screen moves, and I think that's the minimum it can go. And notice how if I make this even bigger, it will continue to go smaller and smaller, almost to the point where you can't really see the graph. So that's what the left does. The bottom's the same, it will bring it up. Right is exactly the same as well, top is the same, so you can basically move this around to suit you. Notice how it's going honestly crazy, and you've got these red lines. I can set it back to reset, and it will go back to the original default method. And that's what these features here do. Awesome. So that's exactly what these features here do on your Matplotlib. It's also handy just because it means that you now know how to navigate when you do have a plot like this, or a plot, a little bit fancier, when you continue with this tutorial series and see how you can make some pretty fancy graphs. Okay, cool, so we're going to start where we left off in the previous video, where I was just showing you how you can change the markers in Matplotlib. So now I'm going to show you how you can change the colour and line reference of graphs. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy these arrays that we had, so X and Y, just for the ease of the video, and we're going to plot this, and I'll show you how you can change the colour. So simple as before, we're just going to do plot X and Y. I'm going to hashtag this out here just so it doesn't interfere with any code that we're going to do. So we're plotting it. Now the way that you change the colour of your plot is very simply, you write colour equals, let's say, red. Now if I run this, I'll show you that it's going to plot this, and it will be in red. It will do so once I have put plt.show. So let's just run that again. Perfect. It is now red. So you don't have to always put colour. You can very simply just get rid of that, and right here we'll stop it and rerun and just write red, and it will be red. But just so you remember, what it is you're assigning, colour equals red is always handy, I find. So we could change this to blue. It was blue originally, we'll change it to green. So green, and there are a whole range of different colours you can choose in Python. If you literally just type in colours in Python, there are so many cool colours. Let's try aqua. I think aqua is one of them. took that to my advantage. Like, look how cool that is. I used that to my advantage on my internship when I did some data analysis. It was very cool. Okay, so that's how you change the colour. Something to mention as well is you can get rid of colour and you can just put C, which helps you understand that you're, choosing a colour here. So there we go, it's changed the colour, perfect. So we'll add our little marker in before, I've previously shown you how to do your markers, and I'll just stop this, we'll run it. There we go, got a little marker, so it's a lot clearer. I'm going to change that back to red. I think aqua is quite a bright colour. It's quite a bright colour and I don't want to make it too bright on the screen. There we go, back to red, perfect. Now with colour, I was also going to show you line referencing, and essentially what you do is you type in line style equals in a string and a dash. Now this will do, so this here will produce a straight line. So we previously had a straight line, so there we go, straight line. If you put 2 dashes, it will make it a dashed line, and I'll show you what happens. Cool, look at that. Now that is, things are starting to look a little bit more visually pleasing. Awesome. So that is how you change the colour and the line style, and I'll just put down, we'll change it here and we'll just say there are so many different colours and line styles. And I'll just say, just Google them to have a play around. So essentially, if you just type in Matplotlib line style types or colours, all of the list will come up and you can have a play around. It is definitely very fun to have a play around with this and try out different colours and different line styles. It's definitely very, very fun. Okay, perfect. So we are picking up from where we last left off in the previous video, where I was showing you how to change the colour and line reference of graphs. So I'm going to stick with this example here. I could copy and paste the entire thing, but it's a lot easier to kind of build on what we've learned in the previous videos. So we've got our x and y, which are just NumPy arrays here. We've got the plot is red, so I'll just give this a run just to show you what's actually happening. It's probably a lot easier to visualize it. Here we go. So this is the plot that we have. So we've got the colour is red, as you can see. We've got the marker, so these little things here are circles, and we've got the line style is dash, so that's what we see here. So firstly, I'm going to show you how to change the marker size. So I'll just put it here, we'll say marker size, and we'll say the way that you do this is quite simply just say marker size, and then you give an integer. So I'll just put here, we'll say I don't know, 2 for example. So that's marker size, and what I'll do is I'll just copy and paste this here and I'll put it below. So we've got marker size. So what you can do is you can add a little extra argument in here. I'm going to take it down to the next line, which you can do because it's all still contained. So I'll say marker size and I'll say 2, and we'll rerun this Python file and see what happens. So marker size is 2. Okay, notice how it's drastically decreased. Now if I was to change this to 10, I'm not too sure what the default setting is on Matplotlib, but I don't think it's 10. I think it might be 5. Let's have a look at 5, so what 5 looks like for the marker size. Yeah, okay. So you could change this to, let's say 30, and I think this will be very, very big. But, it's possible. Look at that. You wouldn't do that, but this is how you change the marker size. Very, very cool. So let's say we want to stick with, I think it was 10 that was quite large, but not too large. Let's say we stick with 10. Okay, cool. So that's the marker size, and I've just put it here, marker size. So let's say we've set that equal to 10. Then we're going to say marker colour. So marker colour, that is quite simply marker colour, and then whatever colour. So let's say we want it to be blue. So we'll put that in here, marker colour equals blue, and I've noticed that I've kind of written different things for notation, so I'll just stick that back to, it doesn't matter whether you do quotation marks or single quotation marks or double quotation marks, but just for the niceness of the notation I'm just going to do both. Just for the so I'm going to do the same, so we'll just run that. So marker colour is now, aha, it should be marker face colour. That's very important just to mention. It's very, very easy to get a little bit confused when you have marker size and marker face colour. So yeah, just worth mentioning, it's marker face colour. So we'll amend that. Apologies for that. Hopefully all will be done now. Amazing, look at that. So we've got this dash line, we've got a red outline, which you probably may not have thought. You maybe thought, you maybe thought, oh, the whole thing would be blue, but it's not. It's outlined on red, and the dash line is red, and we've got the inside of it coloured blue. So you may think, well, what happens if I just want the whole thing blue? The way that you can do that is we can do the marker edge colour. Very simple to what we did before, so marker edge colour, and we'll set that equal to blue as well. So let's put that in here, so marker edge colour, and we'll say blue. Awesome. So let's rerun this, see what happens. Amazing, now the whole thing is blue. Look at that. Now that is cool. This is very handy because it means that, you know, say you've got, let's say we'll change this back to black, because black is standard for plotting graphs. It looks very neat as black. So we're going to say the colour, the dashed line is black, so there we go. And then it means that these markers here stand out much more with the blue. You know, they probably stand out even more if you did red. That's how you change the marker edge colour, the marker face colour, and the marker size as well. It just means you can cater your plots to how you want them visually to look, and it's really, really nice. So have a play around with this, have a play around with what markers you want. You know, you could put an asterisk in here for a star, see what this one looks like. I think it'll look pretty cool. Let's look. Yeah, how cool is that? Little stars. I think the stars are definitely very cute. I very much like them. Now it's worth mentioning that you can simplify this notation to MS for marker size colour. So instead of doing it here, I will just put in brackets what it can be simplified to. So simplified to MS, and we'll just copy this for the others. This is simplified to MFC, and this one is simplified to MEC. So you don't have to write all of this out. You could just put MS, MFC, MEC, and it would still work. Okay, cool. So we are picking up from where we last left off in the previous video, where I showed you the marker size, marker colour, and marker edge colour for markers in Matplotlib. So in the previous video I have shown you how you can change the colour and the line style, but I'll just refresh it in your memory now. So I'm just going to say line colour, and the way that you do that is you just say the colour equals, say whatever colour you want, so red, and that can be simplified to C, so C equals red. Then the line style, this is simply line style, as can be seen here. It's going to be equal to whatever it is you want. So that would be a straight line, that would be a dashed line, and I'll just put variety of these, and you can find all of those online. Now the final thing, which I haven't mentioned in other videos, is the line width. Now this is quite important because sometimes, you know, lines can be a little bit distracting if you are plotting certain, you know, plots like scatter plots. So line width is really, really useful, especially if it's a little bit too big or a little bit too small. So the way that we do that is we say line width, and we let that equal to, you know, a number. So let's say 2, and that can be simplified to LW. So we'll add it into this plot that we have here. So we've got our NP array. We've got our 2 arrays that we're plotting. We're going to plot it with all these different factors in here, and the final one we're going to say is line width, and we're going to let that equal to 2. I think the default line width is 1, so we'll just see what happens now. Okay, cool. So that has got bigger. Now I'm going to, you know, put it to 20. This is going to be massive, but it just shows you how you can change it. Yeah, there you go. Very, very large. So I wouldn't recommend ever doing a line width that size, but equally, if you really want to, then go, you know, by all means go ahead. So yeah, line width 2, definitely a lot nicer. So that's how you do. So that's how you change different elements of the line. I just thought in the previous video, you know, I mentioned marker size, marker colour, marker edge colour, all these things to do with the marker, and I thought, well, I'll make a little bit of a summary on what you can do for the line as well. Okay, cool. So we are continuing with where we left off on the previous video on this tutorial series. If this is the first video you've watched on this tutorial series, then all these different things on here is what you can be getting up to. So I'd recommend checking out those videos if you're interested. But for today, I'm going to be showing you how you can plot more than one graph on a plot. So what I've started with is I've started with an X and a Y variable, both arrays. We plot them and then we'll show it, and then similarly we'll do the same again but for two different variables with different arrays. And just before I do so, I'm just going to comment out this previous plot that we did, just so it doesn't interfere with anything that we've done. So I will just hashtag that out. Perfect. So watch what happens. I'm going to run this Python file as before, and we're going to plot these two plots. So we've got a very standard plot here. It's plotted these first two arrays, so 0, 0, 10, 1, 100, 2, as you can see by these points here. Then when I cross off this particular graph, it will give me a new graph. Now this is figure 1, and this is exactly what we see by this second arrays here, by these second arrays. So you may be thinking, well, I want to plot these two lines, so this here and these here, on the same plot. How do I do that? Now the very easy way that you can do it is by simply getting rid of this plt.show. So what's important to mention is essentially whatever you write before this plt.show, it will always plot on the same plot. So for example, if I now run this Python file, watch what happens. Amazing, look at that. It's plotted two different plots on the same plot. It's plotted two different graphs on the same plot. So this is our first one and this is our second one. Essentially the more lines you add, the different colours they will be. So if I was to add a completely new one, okay, let's add a new one. Let's add it into here. So we'll do another one here. We'll call it R and T, R and S. We'll put R and S here. We'll change that to 50, change that to 46, and we'll change that to 10. Okay, now let's run. So what we've got here is we've got three different lines. So this is a plot, we're asking it to plot it. Here's another line, asking it to plot it. Here's another line, asking it to plot it. And then finally, we're asking Python to show it. So Matplotlib is going to show it. So we run this, and hopefully we'll have three different lines. There we go. That one's a little bit interesting. It goes back on itself. But there you go. We've got three different lines. How cool is that? So essentially, all you need to remember is to just get rid of the plt.show. Essentially, any plot you want to be on its own, put a plt.show. Python will then show that plot. You can move on, code some more, and replot. So, you know, if I was to just put a plt.plot in here, put that plt.show, that's meant to be a show, apologies, show in here, it's the plt.show. I meant the plt.show, just to clarify. So we've added the plt.show in there, and now when we rerun these graphs, they're all on individual sections. They're all blue because they're all individual graphs. So that is how you plot more than one graph on a plot. And I'll just say here, 3 plots, and we'll just get rid of plt.show. I'll just completely get rid of it, there, and have the final plt.show. We'll run it. Amazing. And just for the fun of this video, I'm gonna comment back in this one that I previously did. So this was a bit fancier, so we'll comment that back in, run it, and let's see what happens. Amazing. Look at that one. I think the coordinates for that one were a little bit different. Yeah, they were. Awesome. So that's how you plot different graphs on the same plot. Really, really handy when you do go to do some data analysis and interpreting plots. Really, really handy when you do go on to do some data analysis. Okay, awesome. So we're picking up where we last left off. So the previous video we looked at plotting more than one graph on a plot, and when we ran it, it produced this wonderful plot that is going to be shown. Here we go. This very, very crazy plot. So in the previous video I showed you how you can do that, and in today's video what we're going to be looking at, and I'll just type it in here, and now what we're going to be looking at are legends, labels, and fonts. So legends come in really handy when you want to, you know, interpret your graph, tell the reader what it is that you're plotting on your graph. Labels are handy just to, you know, label the X and Y axis so you know what's going on. And fonts are just always really cool because it means you can tailor your plot to look as nice as you want it to. So what we're going to start by doing is creating some new arrays again. So what I might just do is we're just going to comment these here out, just because we don't want this to interfere with anything we do today, because obviously you saw that when I ran this previously it popped up with this on the screen, and we don't want that today, so we'll just stop that from running. And now we're going to move on to create a new array. So what I might do is I might just we'll just copy this section here, So I'll put it here and I'll just unhashtag it. Awesome. So now when I run this Python file, we will hopefully, awesome. Now what, so we've still got this little bit here, and that's because I haven't hashtagged it out up above. Here we go. So I'll just make sure that's hashtagged out. Awesome. And now if I rerun it, hopefully we'll just get these, there we go, this line here. So these kind of coordinates here. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 80, 40, and then I think that was 192. Awesome. So that's a standard plot. Now I'm going to show you how we can add a legend on it and how we can also add, you know, labels and change the font size and change the fonts that we want on here. So all you're going to do before you do this plot.show, now remember this has to be done last. So if I was to write anything beyond this plot.show, it wouldn't show it on this specific plot. So just bear in mind that when you go to do some Matplotlib, whenever you do plot.show, that is the very last thing you're going to code. That's the last thing you're going to say. So here, what I'm going to show you is how to do an X and Y label. And it's very, very simple. You're just going to put plt.xlabel, and notice it comes up. And let's say, let's say our X label is shoe size. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change things slightly here because obviously these are very unlikely figures for shoe size. So I'll just change these to, let's say we'll have 5, 8 and 10, and then we'll have heights. So we'll say 160, 180, and this is in centimetres, and let's say 200 centimetres. So let's have a look. So plot X label, which will be the A here, will be shoe size. So if I rerun this Python file, hopefully what will happen is it will write shoe size. Awesome. So can you see down here we have shoe size. Cool. So this is the default text in Matplotlib. I love this default text. I think it's very nice and very easy to read. It's not, you know, it's not too fancy that it gets complicated. It's very simple and very nice to read, and it also matches up with the kind of fonts for the labels as well. So that's the X label, and I bet you guessed it, for the Y label it's exactly the same but Y label. So let's say this is heights, and we'll just put here in centimetres, or I'll just put centimetres. So we'll rerun this and hopefully we'll have an X and Y label now. Awesome. So we've got heights here and shoe size here, and you know, you can put in here, let's say UK size guide, because I appreciate that it's different in every country. I think is shoe size, it's different, like the size guides are different. So there, this kind of, you know, explains what kind of shoe size and what you're measuring it in. So we've done X and Y labels, so that's very, very easy. So I'll just put plotting an X and Y label. Now what I'm going to show you is how you can plot a legend. So I honestly love legends, I'm not going to lie. You may wonder what a legend is, and it's essentially a little key that you have. So up here we will have, you know, a little thing, and it will say this is what this blue line represents. So let's say A and B here, let's say these are the, let's say, measurements from, let's say from, I want to say year 11, but if Americans watch this, every year is completely different. So let's just say from class 1. Let's say we have a class and it's the first class that gets measured. So that's these here, these figures. So let's say there's only 3 people in class 1. Okay, so that's the measurements from class 1, and then we're going to plot class 1. So I'll just put here plot class 1. Now what I'm going to show you is something called a legend, and very simply all you need to do is when you have your little plt.plot, you're just going to put label equals and then whatever it is. So in our case, this is class 1. So we can run this and it won't plot the legend, and that is because before the plt.show, you need to just put plt.legend, and all this will do is it will plot the legend. So I'll just put here plot legend. Now the reason why I assume this only works when you do plot.legend, and it's very handy because it means that you can just plot simply without a legend. You know, you can have all these labels in, and it's, you know, can have like so many different classes, 10 class size, and all have labels, and then the plt.legend just plots them all. So I'll show you what happens. We will stop that running and rerun again. Awesome, look at that. Right here it says class 1. We've got shoe size and we've got heights. So what I'm going to show you now is how we can, you know, change this if there are 2 plots. So let's say this is, you know, the measurements from class 1. Okay, so let's say that's the measurements from class 1 here, and we'll do one for class 2, and I'll just separate them so we kind of understand what's going on. So let's say these are the measurements for class 2, and let's change things slightly. So let's say class 2 has smaller shoe size, so 3, 5, let's say we've got an 8 in there, and let's say the heights are also smaller, so let's say 150, 160 and 170. I have no idea what the heights these actually are. I think I was 162 when I last measured myself, and I'm quite small, so don't quote me on these figures. I'm not entirely sure if they're correlated, but either way. So let's say plot class 2. So all we're going to do is we're going to change the label to class 2. Now, default in Python, if you remember from when I did the different plots, Python will plot different colours automatically. If you have 2 different plots or multiple plots, each plot will be a different colour, and there are a whole range of different colours in Python, so you can just allow it to have the default colour, which is what I'll show you now. So if I just run this, I believe it's orange and blue. Yeah, awesome. Okay, awesome. So we've got orange and blue here. So you may be thinking, why are we doing line graphs? Again, we can change this to scatter. So all you do here is you just put, and the way that we make it a scatter graph is you can either change this to plot.scatter, which is I think probably the easiest option. It reminds you that you are plotting a scatter graph. So we'll just rerun this and show you what happens, and the colours will be exactly the same. Awesome. So what this has done here is it said, okay, we're missing a blue. Did I have 2 blues that are the same? 5 and 160. Okay, so I'll just change that to 155 for the video, just so we can see all of the the scatter plots. Okay, cool, there we go. So what you can see is we've got little scatters, and we can see that the orange dots here, which is class 2, are smaller, have kind of smaller shoe size and height, whereas class 1 have larger. So I love the legend. Honestly, it makes things so much easier and allows you to actually understand kind of what's going on. So yeah, pretty cool. So there we go. So that is legends and kind of labeling axes. And now a very important thing that we need to do is plot the title. So this can go anywhere. This is usually anytime you do a label, and I'll just put in here and title, XY label, legend and title. I don't know why I did a capital letter there. We'll just get rid of that. Okay, awesome. So anytime you write the plot here, you have to do your X and label and your legend and title after you've plotted it. So we're just going to say PLT, and it's very simple, title, and we're just going to say shoe size. Let's say put capital letters, shoe size versus height for 2 classes, and we'll run this. Awesome, there we go. And we've got a little title up top. How cool is that? Okay, so that is the essence of how you do heights and shoe size, and that is the essence of how you do X and Y labels, legends, changing colours again, and titles. Awesome. So now what we're going to do is just show you how you can change the font type when you do plot. So that will just be changing what this will look like here. So the way that we do that, and we will just pop it in here, and we'll say changing kind of the fonts, so colour, font itself, size, etc. So all I'm going to say is we're going to say font 1. We'll do one font just to show you the example. So we're going to say in here it's going to be squiggly brackets. So essentially what we put in here is we start with family. Now what family means is this is the font that you want. So I don't know if Helvetica is built into here, but I think what I'll do is I'll just say we'll do one that I definitely know works, so serif. So this is going to do the font serif, and then I'm going to say, okay, let's do the size. So I will say size colon, and let's say we want size, let's say 23, something crazy like that. And then we want the colour, so we'll have the colour in here, and we will say let's have the colour red. Awesome. So we've got some squiggly lines under here, and that's just because Python's telling us that it wants some spaces after it. That's fine, that's PyCharm. Good formatting there from PyCharm. So we've got this one font, and all we're going to do is we're going to just put it into the title. So let's say we want to change the font of the title. We're going to say font dict is going to be our font 1. Okay, so let's run this, and let's see what the title looks like. Let's have a look. Whoa, cool, look at that. Awesome. So there we go, massive title. And similarly, you can do the same for the others. So let's say we do want the exact same, parameters for our X and Y labels. So let's have font 1 again in here, and comma, and we'll have font dict equals font 1. We'll pause this, we'll rerun it. Awesome, look at that, huge. Red is very bright, I must admit, but it's honestly so cool. How cool is that? So there we have it. That is exactly how you change the kind of labels, the font size, all of that cool stuff on your plot, and I think it honestly looks incredible. So in today's video we have gone over how to plot X and Y labels, legends, a title, also how you can change, around the font style, font size, font colour, all these things of those labels, and create a pretty cool looking plot on here. Okay, awesome. So we are picking up from where we last left off, and now what we're going to do is we're going to look at plotting grids. And in fact, yeah, we'll do it here again. We'll do different sections each time. So plotting grids in Matplotlib. So what we're going to do is we're just going to comment all of this out from what I did previously, and that's just so it doesn't interfere with anything that we're going to do today. So we're going to copy what we did previously. So let's have let's have A and B again as we had before, and this is just so we don't have to waste time writing out new arrays. So we're going to have A and B again as we did in the previous kind of in the previous section, and we're going to do plt dot plot A and B, and then plt dot show. Okay, so this is going to plot a very simple graph as we established in the last section. There we go, very, very easy graph. And now what I'm going to show you is how you can plot grids in the background of this, so it's a lot easier to read off, because you may be looking at this right here and you think, okay, what is that here? Let's have a look. I'm going to just see what that point is where the graph changes. Okay, so I think it's 8 and 180. I think you can spend around ages trying to figure out what it is. A grid is a lot easier to help you kind of navigate what section is what. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change this to a scatter, and that's just because you'll be able to see the point here and point here and point here, and then we can see where that is on a grid. So the way that you do a grid is you just say plt.grid, very, very easy, open brackets, we'll rerun this file, and then watch what happens. How cool is that? We have a grid and we can see exactly where these points are. How cool is that? That is very, very cool. So now we've got a grid on our plot. Now what I'm going to show you is some parameters you can put in this grid section here. So we can do something as simple as the colour. Again, let's say we want the colour to be red. We seem to like red in this tutorial series, but it stands out so you can see it a lot more vividly. So we have these lines here. Let's say the lines are too thin and we can't read them. Let's say we want the line width, and we can change that. So let's say we'll change it to 2, which is going to be quite big. And let's say we want, instead of the line width, instead of the line to be a simple line, let's say we want it to be dashed. So we'll say line style, and if you remember from the previous sections, a dashed line is 2 dashes like that. Okay, and now if I was to run this file, watch what happens. Whoa, now that is very bright. In fact, you can't even see the scatter plots because of how bright it is. So that is how you change things. Now what may be a little bit of a better idea is if you change the line width to, let's say, 0.5, so it's a little bit smaller, and we'll change the colour to maybe, well, we'll keep it with red. Okay, so let's run that and let's have it a little bit thinner lines, and let's see what happens. Awesome, there we go. So the lines are a lot thinner, they're dashed, so we can see the the points here that we have. Awesome, how cool is that? So now what I'm going to just show you is how you can simply have the grid so that it's not vertical and horizontal. So if you just want it, one axis, the way that you do that very simply is you'll just type in here axis, and then you'll say what axis you want. So let's say y-axis. We will rerun this, and notice now there is only lines on the y-axis. And similarly, if you want to do the x-axis, let's rerun this. Awesome, x-axis. So that is plotting grids in Matplotlib. I appreciate this has been a very short video, but honestly, grids are so easy, and grids are so easy to plot in Matplotlib, and they're so helpful when you actually want to infer data and read things off a plot. So that is how you plot grids. So that is how you plot grids in Matplotlib. Okay, awesome. So we're going to start from where we finished off in the previous video, which was plotting grids in Matplotlib. So we're going to just hashtag all of this out like I do, at the start of every kind of new section, and that's just so anything we write isn't going to interfere with what we do now. So I'm going to show you scatter plots. Now these are honestly awesome. I know I've mentioned them previously in this video. I know I've mentioned them previously in previous sections. So here we've got scatter here, but this is going to be showing you some really cool things you can do with scatter plots, and I'm very excited to get it underway. So we've already seen, so I'll just put here, we've already seen how to plot multiple scatter plots on the same graph, and I'll just copy the paste and I'll just copy the code that I used for that. So here we go. So we had two different classes, and I will just copy all of this from what we did, and I'll just kind of change a few things around just so it's not too complicated. We'll just kind of sort things out here. Okay, so what we had different measurements from class 1. So we had different measurements from a class 1, a hypothetical class 1. These here were the shoe sizes, and this was the corresponding height. So we had a student with size 5 shoes and height 160 centimetres, and then so on with this, 8 and 180 and 10 and 200. We plotted a scatter plot. We labelled it with a legend, and all that does is it will have a little key. If you're a little bit confused, then I'd recommend checking out the video where I mention labels, but it's honestly okay if you don't understand, because it's not the essence of this video. So we had measurements from class 1, and we then also had measurements from class 2. Now what we did in the previous video was we changed the font of the title, which if you're interested in how to do that, then check out that video, but for today I'm just going to omit that because it can get a little bit confusing. It'll make the plot look a little bit bright if you've watched the previous video. So I'll just run this and I'll show you what happens, and I'll just minimize that. Okay, awesome. So what this has done is it has plotted class 1, which is blue, plotted class 2, which are orange, and we've labelled the shoe size is the bottom axis, so x-axis, and the heights here are the y-axis, and then we've just labelled the title here. So the title and how to do X label, Y label, title, very, very simple, just this chunk of code here. And don't worry, this whole section of code will be on my GitHub, so don't worry, everything that I've done in this tutorial series will be entirely on my GitHub. So we've done this, we've got these plots here, and now I'm just going to show you how you can kind of do some cool things with scatter plots, which I just think are honestly amazing. So something that you can do, and what I will do, and I'll just pop it here. So these are the measurements. Let's just break this down a little bit, have a few spaces in between. So these are the measurements from class 1. Now what I'm going to say is we can assign each scatter point to be a specific colour. Let's say we have 3 students in class 1, and each of them, let's say, has a favourite colour. So this way, we can decipher which student is which by their favourite colour. And this is on the assumption that each student has a different favourite colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say favourite colour. I'll write the British version, the colour here. We spell it with a U. I appreciate Americans and other people don't, so just bear with that for a second. We're going to create a list, and we're just going to have the list of all the colours, the 3 students' colours, favourite colours. So let's say let's say this is me. Let's say student 1 has a favourite colour of green, student 2 has a favourite colour of red, and just simply the final student has a favourite colour of blue. Now we have this favourite colour, or let's say favourite colours. And what you can do is you can input this into your scatter. So you can say, ordinarily we can say, okay, let's have our colour as red. And what that would do, it would take every colour, so this is class 1, plot class 1. So class 1 points, which are blue, they would all be red, because we've just said let's change them to red. So I'll run that for now, and we'll show you what happens when you just change the colour itself specifically, so red. Notice now, all the points have changed to red. Awesome, so that's how you change every single point in class 1. What you can do, and this is really, really cool, is you can actually set it to be the favourite colours that we've defined up here. And this is the list of green, red, blue. So I'll rerun this and watch what happens. How cool is that? We have each of the student has its favourite colour assigned to it. So we've got green, red and blue, which is what we have here, green, red and blue. So that is how you can assign each scatter point to be a specific colour, which is really cool, very, very enjoyable, and a lot easier when you have smaller, points. If you have 100 points, it can be a little bit, I suppose, more difficult, but I'll explain that in just a second where I'm going to show you colour maps, which is pretty cool. So what I'm going to show you now is something known as a colour bar. So for this, I'm going to start a completely new example, and we're just going to hashtag all of this out, just because I appreciate there's quite a lot going on in all of this code here. We're going to start again. So let's say colour bar. Okay, so let's say we have shoe size of students, and let the NP array of, let's say we have 5, 6, 7. Let's say the heights are an NP array of, let's say, 160, 170 and 190. I think that's quite tall, but we'll go with it. And then let's say something else. Let's say we'll have something like, let's say siblings, so number of siblings the student has. So we'll say, okay, one has 3, and let's say one has a really, really big family and has 8. What we can do now is, you may think, well, there's 3 different things. How are we going to plot that onto a plot? So we're going to say plt.show, plt.scatter. We're going to say, let's do the shoe size for the x-axis. We'll do heights for the y. We're going to let the colour equal siblings. Now you may be wondering what's going on here, and I'll just explain in a minute. Then we're going to say the C map, so the colour map is going to be a rainbow. Now I'm going to say plt.colourbar, and we're going to say plt.show. And I'm going to run this and show you what happens. That's still running, isn't it? Okay, awesome. So you're probably thinking, okay, I have no idea what's just happened there. What is going on? So essentially what you can do with Matplotlib and with colour bars, and honestly this is so cool. Let's say you have 3 different variables. So here we have shoe size, height and siblings. What you can actually do is we can plot, what did we have for x? Shoe size. So shoe size on the bottom. Then we have heights on the top, so 5, 160. Here I think we had 6 and 170. Yep, here. And then finally the final point. Now what you can do is you can colour code that according to how many siblings they have. So here we have purple, and purple corresponds to 1. So the first student had 1 sibling. Then this student here, so around that colour is about here, so 3. We put 3, perfect, and here this is red, so 8. How cool is that? We have managed to create a colour bar with 3 different variables, and plotted like this. This can be made to see. This can be plotted a little bit nicer with a title, axis, all things like that. A title and axis, all things like that. But I just thought that was really, really cool, and that is how you plot colour bars on scatter plots, which I used as part of my data analytic internship that I did a lot. So yeah, if you're going to go into data analytics or just coding in general, this is very, very handy, especially when you're interpreting data. So we're going to continue with where we kind of last left off. So for any of you that are now joining the tutorial series or just watching for this specific kind of video, this section, all of this up here is part of the entire Matplotlib tutorial series that I'm doing on my channel. So what my idea is to do little mini videos like these, and also create an entire video as well, a big series. That's a little bit of a side note. Today I'm just going to hashtag out what I did in the previous section, and we are going to look at bar charts in Matplotlib. Let's go. Okay, we'll do 3 exclamation marks for a bit of emphasis. Let's go. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is show you how you can do bar charts in Matplotlib. Very, very simple examples, and then you can extend on that with, more data, let's say. But for today I'm going to keep it relatively simple. So let's say we have a toy factory. So I'll say let's say we have a toy factory and it sells, let's say I'll say 4 different types of toys. Okay, so let's say here toys, let's say it sells teddies, or like a teddy. Let's say it also sells yo-yos, the things that you bounce and they yo-yo back up. What else do we have? Teddies, yo-yos. Let's say it does a Jack in the Box, Jack in the box, and then I'm trying to think of toys, I must admit, and then let's say it does some kind of electronic toy. We'll say electronic toy. This is a very interesting toy factory. It doesn't do it does some very interesting toys, but either way, let's say that this toy factory knows that it does these 4 different types of toys, and it wants to, you know, create a bar chart of how much it has in stock. Let's say in stock, and this is basically saying how many they have. So let's say they have 200 teddies, let's say they have 150 yo-yos, they have 100 Jack in the Box, and let's say because this electronic toy is very popular, they have 300 in stock. So what we can do is we can plot a bar chart. So let's say plot a bar chart of this data. And very simply, all you're going to do is say plt.bar. Now what's worth mentioning in all of my videos that I've done on this channel, this is the assumption that you have this installed here, this import matplotlib as pyplot as plt, so that's just something that you need to do to get started, and this is in the very start of this tutorial series. So we're going to say plt.bar, we're going to plot the toys on the x-axis, and we're going to say, okay, well, how many are in stock on the y-axis, and let's say we want the colour of these bar charts to be, let's say, blue. I quite like blue. And then all you're going to say is plt.show, and this is what you need every time, so we always need this to show the final graph. We'll run this and let's see what happens. Whoa, how cool is that? So there we go, we've got our very first bar chart. I suppose I should probably capitalise all of these just to make the kind of I suppose, graph nicer. We can obviously plot on the side, so let's, you know, we can obviously plot x and y axis and titles, so let's add that in just to show you that we can do that. So we'll say plot title, let's say number of toys in stock, our x-axis, so x label, and that is down here, so we'll say these are the toys, so toys, and then plot our y label, and we will say these are kind of number available. We'll say number available, and I'll just capitalise that. So number available. And is that all we want? I think that will do. Okay. What I'll show you just before we do that is you can actually make these thinner, these lines. So the way that we do that is we say width, and let's say we'll change that to 0.5 so it gets thinner. I think the default is 1, so we'll just run this and see what happens. Awesome, it's got thinner. The lines have got thinner, and we also have our labels on here now. How cool is that? Now what we can do is we can omit this colour in here, and we'll just rerun and show you what happens. And its default colour is pictured. So if you want to change the colour associated with each plot, then that's how you do it. You just put a simple colour into here. So let's say we want colour is red, and it'll do all red. Now something that I mentioned in the scatter plot video is how you can change each of these to be different colours, and I'll show you how to do that now. So let's just do something. So that's plotting that, and then we'll just put plotting kind of labels and title. I'm just kind of separating it up so you kind of understand what's going on. So what we can do is, let's say we want each of these teddies, you know, let's say we want each of these to be certain colours. So the way that you do that is we'll say colours, we'll create a list, and we'll have the different colours. So let's say red, let's say blue, green, yellow. Yellow is quite bright, so we'll do orange. So we have this list of colours. Now what you do is, instead of just writing red here, you can just simply change that to colours, because that is our variable defined here. We have this list of colours, so red, blue, green, orange, and hopefully that is what each of these will, you know, change colour to. So we'll rerun this. Yeah. Cool. How awesome is that? So we've changed each of these to be different colours now, and that is, you know, one way of doing it. Obviously that can be quite hard when you have a lot of data, but I suppose bar charts are mainly used for kind of small comparison between different things. You know, you're not going to have 100 different bar charts on one plot, because it's very hard to enter the data, that, you know, it'd be very confusing and different colours would be distracting. So bar charts are very handy in this sense for, you know, smaller sets, so, you know, fewer toys in this example. If there were a lot of toys, it may look a bit silly to have, you know, loads and loads of different lines. So there we go, that is how you plot an awesome looking bar chart. The final thing that I'm going to show you is how you can change it to be horizontal. So I appreciate you may not want your bar charts to be vertical, you want them to be horizontal. And the very easy way that you do that is by swapping here where you have bar, is you're just going to put bar H. Now what is you're just going to put bar H, and that means horizontal. So we'll rerun this and I'll show you what happens. We have an error here. So bar H got multiple values for argument width. Okay, so I assume that is because the default will be set to 1, so we'll just remove the width from here. Hopefully, there we go, awesome. I assume what just happened there was the default for bar H is 1 and it will only allow you to do 1. I'll just test it out again, see if width, you know, will go back to 1. I think there are different, yeah, we got the same error again. So that's just something to bear in mind with bar versus bar H, is that I don't think you can change the width to be the way that you want it to do, because it's obviously going to be like this. Awesome, there you go, that's how you do a horizontal bar chart. That is so cool. So again, you know, you can make this even larger, you can add a few more elements in here, you can have one, you can have less. I quite like vertical, I think vertical looks pretty cool. So we'll rerun this. There we go. Awesome. How cool is that? You have plotted your very own bar chart. And again, this can be changed. It doesn't have to be toys. It can honestly be anything. You know, anything that you can possibly imagine you can put into here. So have a play around with it and see what you come up with on your bar chart. Okay, awesome. So we are in the folder that we were in, the file that we were in previously. This is when we did bar charts in Matplotlib. So if you're interested in bar charts as well, then recommend checking out this video. But essentially all of this code up here is everything that I've done as part of this Matplotlib tutorial series. So if you're interested in learning a whole range more things about Matplotlib, then I'd recommend checking out this tutorial series. I have the videos split up into individual videos and also one large video where I collated all the videos together. So enough of that, we're going to get into pie charts in Matplotlib. Let's go. Okay, cool. So we're going to use an example like the previous section where we had, you know, toys. Let's say we have a vehicle company that sells, we'll have cars, bicycles, let's say tractors, and let's say motorbikes. Okay, so we're going to define a variable. So let's say vehicles, and in this we're going to have the different vehicles. So we'll have cars, we have bicycles, we have tractors, and we have motorbikes. Okay, so let's say this company has a certain amount of these in stock. So we'll do what we did previously and we'll just say kind of in stock, how many cars they have in stock on this particular day. So let's say cars, they have 30 cars. Let's say bicycles, we'll have more bicycles because a lot more room to store bicycles. Let's say they have 10 tractors. Tractors are quite hard to store. And let's say we have 37 motorbikes. What we can do is we can plot a pie chart of this. So I'm going to say plt.py. Now this is if you've imported plt at the top here, so import matplotlib.pyplot as plt. There is a video on my channel explaining how you do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to first write in stock. Now this is different to a lot of previous videos where we simply just put vehicles, comma, in stock, you know, the two variables. But what we're going to say is we're going to say in stock, because this is, you know, the numbers we have here, that's how many there are, and that's what's going to create our pie chart. Then we're going to say here, labels, and this is how we know what each section of the pie chart is labelled, and we're just going to say vehicles. And I'm just going to run this, and we'll see what happens. And I just realised I haven't done a plt.show, so it's not going to run. So we need to remember we need to have plt.show, so it will run. We'll click run. Awesome, look at that. So we've got our very first pie chart, and it honestly looks incredible. Now something to mention with pie charts is that they always start from this section here, so it will always go along this line here and it will go round this way. So notice we have cars, bicycles, tractors, motorbikes. So we have cars, bicycles, tractors, motorbikes. That is just the default setting, and the way that you overcome that is by just changing here by saying start angle, and let's say we want it to be at 90 degrees. So here this will be 0 degrees, and then round 90 then another 90 is 180, another 90 is 270, and then back to here. So let's say we wanted to start from up here at 90 degrees. So we'll just say 90, we'll rerun this, and let's have a look what happens. Awesome, so it started from 90, so we have cars, bicycles, tractors, motorbikes. Cool. So that's how you change the angle. Now, what I'm going to show you is how you can change the colours. So these are obviously default colours in Matplotlib, but the way that we can change that is by just creating our own colours variable. So we'll create a list of different colours. So let's say we want cars, let's say we want red for cars. Let's say for bicycles we want orange. Let's say for tractors we want, let's say green. And then for motorbikes, we'll say blue. I haven't just copied, no, we've changed it around. Okay, and then in here, all you're going to say is your colour is going to equal the variable that we assigned, so colours here. So we've got colour equal colours. Now if I rerun this, notice how the colours are. We've got an unexpected Q argument colour. That is because I've spelt colour wrong. I've spelt it with the U, that is the British version of how you spell colour, and PyCharm works with American spelling, so that's just something to bear in mind. We've still got an error. I've put colour instead of colours, so it needs to know what kind of colours you're going to input here. There we go, because obviously you can't have one colour because the entire thing would be that entire colour. Okay, there we go, so it's changed the colours around for us. How cool is that? So now we've learned how to plot a pie chart and assign different colours, and also, it's labelled it automatically for us. Another argument we can put into this plt.py, and I'm just going to put it here, and we'll add it down. So we're just going to put a comma and enter, so this will still, the commas, the brackets here are still together. All I'm going to say is shadow equals true. Now you may wonder what this does, and I will show you. It's very simply just going to add a little shadow, so you can see it on the outside of here, so it kind of looks 3D. And the reason why this is helpful is when you then take sections away, and I'll show you how you do that now. So what you can do is you can take, say, motorbikes, and we can move it away, so we can take this section here and it can be kind of moved that way, and the rest of the pie chart remains quite simply like a pie, like someone's just taken a piece of pie out of the pie. So the way that you do that is, I'll call it section out, and that just means that this is how much each section will be away from the centre. So let's say we want the first section, so let's say we want cars to be out by, let's say, 0.1. And then the rest will stay in. Now you're probably wondering what is going on here, and it will all make sense when we plot. So let's say the rest of them, so bicycles, tractors and motorbikes, want to be 0, so they're just going to stay here, and this is going to move out by 0.1. Okay, now we can add in here plt.py. All you're going to say is explode is my section out. So explode means, you can explode this graph, you can make it bigger. Explode simply means you can break it apart. So I will rerun and we'll see what happens. Okay, cool, look at that. So notice how here a section has come out. So let's say I want to do the same with all of them. We'll move them all out by 0.1, and I will rerun, and hopefully they'll all be exploded out. Look at that, how cool is that? Now that is awesome. Let's say you want to take 2 of them apart. So let's say your biggest sellers are your cars and motorbikes. So let's say your cars and motorbikes we're just going to keep there, and then the rest are going to be expanded out. And notice the shadow really adds this element of 3D. Okay, so here let's notice what's happened. So it's taken it apart slightly, but the issue is because of where the shadows are at, it kind of doesn't look as cool. So I would recommend, if you're going to take a section out, take it out either here or here, or just take it out even further. So we could take this out by 0.3 and this out by 0.3, and hopefully this will make it look, there we go, a little bit better. But as I said, where shadows come in, it does change things slightly, so make sure it looks a little bit better. So I'll set all these back to 0.1 because I think it looks so cool. And as I said, what's worth remembering is to add the shadows in here. I'll show you what it looks like with the shadows and without. So the shadows add this sense of 3D to it. I will take out the shadow section, so let's say shadows are false, and we'll rerun. Now it looks cool, I just don't think it looks as cool as when you have the shadows in, so we're going to keep the shadows in for now, and we'll rerun. Awesome, that's so cool. So that is how you do a very, very cool looking pie chart in Matplotlib. What I'm going to show you now is how you can do a legend. Now if any of you know, I love a good legend, so we're going to add one in now. Is you simply just add a plt.legend, and we can run this and a little legend will appear up here. So notice that it has, obviously, it's overlapping here. We can overcome that. Now, this is something that always works with the legend, and it's by saying lock. And you can basically assign where you want your legend. So let's say upper right. Now, what you'll notice with this specific plot, okay, is it does, it's moved it back. So we'll just do let's do upper left. Change it to a different area. So upper left. Okay, so it's moved it. Now, you may think, well, it hasn't really improved because we can't see what's going on here. It's still blocking part of my pie chart. You could either completely get rid of your labels and just have your legend, or we can use something which is called bbox to anchor. And all you're going to assign is the variable at which you want, whereabouts on your screen you want it. So the way that we do that is we'll just put here, so let's say 1.15 and 1.15, which is going to be in the top corner. We'll rerun this. Okay, so it's completely off the screen now, maybe a little bit too far, but when I zoom out, you can see it there. So have a play around with this and get it set up perfect for you. That's how you kind of move your legend. And then finally, you could just simply add a little title. So we can say vehicles, and it will add a title. So I'll just move this to the X. Let's move that to maybe 1.05 and see if it moves back over to the X slightly. Okay, perfect, look at that. So we've got our final pie chart, we have vehicles, cars, bicycle, tractors, and the entire pie chart looks perfect. How amazing is that? So that has been the video today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then please give this video a big thumbs up, and if you want to support the channel even further, then hit the subscribe button and the bell notification with it so you don't miss out on any future videos, and also check out the donation link in the description of this video. But for now, I will see you all in the next video.